Hi. So this evening I've been thinking about religion and ecology and the natural pairing of the two. And the reason that these two, to me, appear to be a natural pair will come out more clearly within my main argument within this piece. But for now, let me just say, as a preface to this entry, that I consider myself to be a student of the humanities. And so, as a student of the humanities, I'm engaging with the remnants and the activities, the practices of the human story, current and the current interpretations of past interpretations of the human story and expressions of that story. And so the humanities would be what I consider to be the content of the things that I'm actually trying to pursue and do. But there's another distinction to be made here, and that is methodologically, what am I actually pursuing? And what I'm considering myself to be pursuing methodologically, I think expressing myself through the humanities is a position I've found myself in, and comfortably so, and I think that there's a more fleshed out discussion to be had there. But methodologically, I'm pursuing a philosophical understanding. And it's an activity. And the sense in which it's an activity is this. If we were to discuss nature, well, philosophically, I'd be interested to discuss naturalism, the way that nature has been bundled up into this certain categorization and understood almost primarily through that lens, through a kind of hegemony of a certain kind of scientific understanding of the universe, deterministic, mechanistic, Newtonian perspective, the product of a vast scientific understanding and a vast achievement base and all these wonderful things. But also as a student of the humanities, challenging this ism, like any ism, and this collectivity as it's become a kind of monster of its own weight. And so further, I like to think in terms of the challenges that naturalism has presented now that have come about through a broader understanding, which I think actually has come out of a religious understanding. And so this is what I mean by that. In the most broad sense, if we talk about the scale of religion, and we speak of it in terms of what it's trying to do, well, it's trying to have a certain kind of, in fact, it's trying to refine a certain kind of experience of the world. And I say of the world, and you know what I mean, but that could mean so many things. It could mean, and this is the scale I'd like to discuss, it could mean all the way from the scale of the self, all the way up into the scale of the cosmos. And so this broad scale is the religious scale, because, in certain Eastern traditions, relation to the self is the primary thing. So, for example, in some Buddhist traditions, and I think, in fact, most, although I'm not an expert on this, the cosmos is not the question whatsoever. Then when you look into the Abrahamic religions, the moral, the ethical, and aesthetic underpinnings, all the descriptions, all the categories, all take place within a broader cosmological understanding. The natural order itself is the framing, the actual place where this whole thing's taking place. So this broader perspective invites the question, and I might have lost myself here, but this relationship to to our own thinking, and this is where I was going, through the conceptions of nature. And so we're still working within a naturalistic framework, but it bears the brunt of these the broadest religious questions, which, if we're going to take a natural perspective, have to bear something of the philosophy that we take upon the self. And so another way to frame this is in terms of organism and environment. And so, like when I do this laying out with my hands, it's like the self in the religious experiential point of view aligns with the organism, and then the broadest possible cosmos aligns with a certain kind of ecosystem. And when you think of it this way, this is the most interesting thing, because if we consider life at all, even back in the religious perspective, but specifically in this naturalist perspective, life in any context has to be included within the broadest possible context, because the ecosystem for life is not simply one context. It is that one context, but it's all possible contexts as well. I don't mean possible as in possible universes, although we could go there. I mean, to the real extent that the impingement of the entirety of the creation has taken upon itself just for me to say these words, and this is kind of the process relational point of view, we're in direct relation to the entire cosmic scheme. Direct because we are actually the recipients of that entire order organizing itself into various ways, however you'd like to describe that. So the ecosystem of life, through this vast expansion of our understanding, becomes vaster and vaster and vaster, and more complex and more complex, and more contingent factors. In this sense, it seems like a historical accident that religion and ecology would have been separated at all, because the consideration that we can disentangle one possible ecosystem and consider that to be some kind of isolated entity, you could do that if you want to frame your understanding, say, of the planetary sphere. But the planetary sphere only makes sense within the cosmic sphere, and then if we go the other direction, the organism only takes place within that broader ecosystem as well, and the cellular life only exists within that broader ecosystem. But then deeper and even past the conception of life, the cellular only takes place within the context of chemical relations, physical relations. These things are undergirding the entirety of it, and then we can say this all the way down to the quantum foam of pure possibility. And so I guess what I'm saying is the philosophical challenge that we're arriving at when we think about these things at all, to my mind, is presenting a new and refined conception of naturalism, and we have no choice but to do that when we do cosmology, when we do understanding of the self. These are fully integrated, which might sound a little airy-fairy, but it's actually the natural order is only defined by natural beings. So it seems impossible to distinguish the two completely.